We now move to example 14, and Monique Kwan turns her attention to an EM country that is experiencing a surge of capital inflows. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Again, that depends. If you have an emerging market country and there is a surge of capital inflows, that seems good. Why? Because money is flowing into the country. Maybe this is foreign direct investments, or it might be foreign portfolio investments. So this is good. But the challenge is that this money also might leave very quickly. If the money leaves very fast, then that can create issues. The country recently improved its fiscal position through the privatization of state-owned assets, and its sovereign credit rating was upgraded. These are pull factors. Pull factors means where something is happening within the country that is pulling money into the country. And the curriculum gives a laundry list of potential pull factors. The opposite of a pull factor is a push factor, where something is happening in the rest of the world that causes money to flow to your country. So nothing to do with you, more to do with what's happening in the rest of the world. Although the country's current policies allow a high degree of capital mobility, it is becoming concerned about the potential future impact of these inflows. What's that future impact, potential impact, which I alluded to earlier? The money might quickly leave, so that will create volatility and instability in your local markets. Okay, so that's the context. The EM country is more likely to engage in sterile intervention if it's... Now here, we cover this in the regular lecture, but there is a concept of sterile intervention and unsterile intervention. So the central bank or the country in general is going to do some intervention. So let's understand these two terms. A country engages in sterile intervention when inflation is a concern. Now, what does a country do with sterile intervention? What the country does is it sells domestic securities. So from the central bank perspective, when domestic securities are sold to banks and other institutions, then what is happening? Liquidity is being mopped up. So the money supply is being reduced. So why is this an intervention? What is happening is money is flowing in from the rest of the world, and the central bank wants to control the impact. So it lets money come in, but mops up liquidity by selling bonds and other government securities, right? So this is called a sterile intervention. What is an unsterile intervention? Just for completeness, and then we'll go back to this. With unsterile intervention, this is appropriate when the currency is overvalued. If the currency is overvalued, then it is okay to expand the monetary base. If the monetary base goes up, then what will happen to the value of the currency? It will come down, which is okay if the currency is already overvalued. That will drive the currency towards a fair value. Okay, now coming back to this sterile intervention. Okay, is more likely to engage in sterile intervention if its inflation rate is high. Is this true? I just made this point. A country engages in sterile intervention when inflation rate is a concern. Inflation rate is a concern means that inflation rate is high. So that is appropriate. What about if the currency is undervalued? Then it would not be appropriate. Okay, if its currency appreciation is caused by push factors rather than pull factors, that is not the correct answer. So the best answer is A. So let's look at question 2 now. If the country used capital controls instead, what would happen? And understand the context here. Initially, the capital controls do not exist. and we are thinking about moving towards capital controls. When there are no capital controls, then money flows in and out of the country very easily. And the central bank would have to employ monetary policy in order to respond to these capital flows in and out. So that limits the level of independence. If a country moves towards capital controls, then it will actually have more independence with regards to monetary policy. So this is an incorrect statement. B is actually true. Substantial evidence suggests that capital controls work well if the capital inflows and outflows are not persistent. On the other hand, if capital flows are persistent, for example, if capital is constantly coming into the country, then capital controls do not work that well. So B is correct, that this approach of capital controls would be more likely to succeed when capital inflows are less persistent. And then C is not a true statement.